Welcome, everybody, to Hearthstone Grandmasters. It's the European region that we'll be on today. We're in our second day of week number 4. I'm Nathan, that's Admirable Zamora. I'm joined by Simon Sottle Welch, not Melch, to be specific. And Sottle, we got some matches here that are crucial for players if they want to set themselves off to that record that nobody wants to be at. And then at the same time, we have players who are looking to hunt down securing a #1 spot in their division.
Yeah, and there's a couple of matches specifically that play into that, which we'll get into when we see the schedule. But in general, you know, we are approaching that halfway point, and we really talked about this yesterday. But, you know, it goes without saying, really, halfway through the season, the stall is kind of set out about whether your remaining second half of the season is going to be about pushing for playoffs or winning the group, or whether it's going to be about staving off relegation.
Yep, and staving off last place is very important for that one because, as you mentioned, relegation with it. You definitely want to be playing next season. Let's take a look at the schedule and see exactly what we're in store for today, as we have 5 matches that are on deck. Tomorrow, though, we have that 6-match day that's coming up. And so for Bunny Hopper, he was able to secure himself, again, a tie with Yarla, as they seem to be neck and neck throughout 7 matches thus far. And Hunter Ace looking for a 14-match regular season win streak that he's looking for today. And that is a big ticket to setting yourself a giant accomplishment next to that World Championship title.
Yeah, it is. Like, whatever superlatives we can throw out to Hunter Ace, he just keeps living up to them. Casey was the last player to defeat him in match number 7 of his run-through last season. Since then, he clean swept the entire division in his second run-through, went 7-0 towards the end of last season, picked up 6-0 at the start of this season as well, so he's now going for number 14. We play Silvername, who's having a much better season himself this season, sitting currently in one of those playoff spots in Division A as well.
Yeah, 3-3. I think a big improvement for what he's had. Have a couple question marks on some of his deck lists from myself this week, and then Viper and Tice sitting at 5th and 6th. They're facing off today in what might be one of the craziest lineups that we have seen in European Grandmasters thus far, with Viper's crazy-looking Control Warrior deck.
Yeah, important to set the standards. There's been some ridiculous stuff in APAC, and I think even Americas have been throwing out some crazy stuff with the Mechathune Warlock that we've been seeing, but now you can see our setup for the day, and a lot of very important games here, Admirable. Fino versus Pavel right off the bat. It goes without saying, every game from this point on is a must-win match for Fino.
Yeah.
If he can win that match, then suddenly a couple of others become very, very important. Boston versus Psycho, the immediate follow-up, those are the 2 players that Fino's trying to hunt down in his division. And whereas if you then go across to the other division, Hunter Ace versus Swids in our last match, that's top versus bottom. Hunter Ace with that undefeated streak on the line, whereas Swids, he just needs wins. He needs W's in that win column.
Yeah, he seriously does. I think top versus bottom is, you know, a big mountain to overcome when you're sitting in Swid's position right now, but it's not undoable. And the Boston versus Psycho match, you know, that one stands out in contrast to me as well, because Psycho very much in Fino's camp right now. He had a fantastic start to the previous season, but right now he sits at 2-5 in his match score, which you got to wonder what's going on. What happened this season?
Yeah, I mean, we heard criticisms from Casey yesterday, where Psycho really just kind of threw away a Priest Mirror. Honestly, from my perspective, I asked Casey if he felt the same. He very much did, and he took it a step further and made a real... It wasn't necessarily a criticism as it was a call to action from Psycho. It's like, you are so good at this game, but right now you're not playing enough, you're not practicing hard enough. You need to step it up and get back to the old Psycho that we saw in Season 1. Yeah,
if you missed that game between Casey and Psycho, I really recommend going and check it out on the VOD. You can always go to playhearthstone.com/esports and check out everything you know about Grandmasters. But Casey forced Psycho to draw 14 cards in a single turn due to having 2 Northshire Clerics out, and that's a game loser.
It wasn't 28 though. It could have been. It could have been 28. I'm so disappointed. Still, it was amazing. I don't want to devalue it. It was one of those Priest Mirrors where the game looks over, and then Psycho just made a really crucial mistake, and immediately you saw Casey light up like, "Oh, I can win. I can win. I just need 1 draw, and I can win." It was great.
Literally sits up. Yep. And he's like, "All right, now's
Let's
the time.
Go. Let's play some Hearthstone."
But I'm looking for some of that today because Viper's Control Warrior deck, as I mentioned, looks absolutely crazy this week. But I'm really looking forward to what it can get done, because there are some really cool key interactions here. As at the top end, he's featuring an alternate style of win condition with the Boom Ship and Hakar.
Yeah, and I think this is influenced by two things for Viper coming into this. Firstly, it's the matchups that he's facing up against, and secondly, it's just the influence that the Discovery nerf, I guess if you want to put it like that, has affected Warrior. And cards like Omega Assembly and Frightened Flunky are now significantly weaker in Warrior because if you haven't been paying attention, there has been a patch, which means Discover now no longer has that 400% weight towards class cards, which means you discover valuable class cards like Omega Devastator, Tomb Warden, whatever it is, much less often of those cards. So Viper was talking about it and said, all right, I need to do something very different, which is part of the reason he's come up with this list. But Hakar in particular, there are a lot of decks in the game right now that are trying to empty their deck. Quest Druid, Holy Wrath Paladin, they all have these win conditions where they have to get down to an empty deck. Hakar the Soulflayer can really, really mess with that.
It's a grand fatigue accelerator and also never lets you empty your deck.
Yeah.
Imagine getting to 10 cards in hand and then burning out the Corrupted Bloods that are remaining. Like, that alone is tough to do, let alone while someone's trying to defeat you as you're doing it.
That is the counterplay, though, and it does come up. I have seen it come up against Druid. It's slightly more difficult to execute with Holy Wrath Paladin, but because it's only one initial Corrupted Blood that goes in, you only need that one burn, and then you are set.
Yeah.
And there's also the issue that even with Boomship, that's kind of why it's in there. So he can play the Boomship, he can generate a huge board, which buys him tempo, while he then slams his Hakar into something, right, and can get it killed off. If you're playing Druid, for example, like War Druid Loti is a card that you have to look out for, so you don't have that poisonous minion on board that Viper can use for him to immediately kill his Hakar very quickly.
Yeah.
You can delay that by a couple of turns, buy yourself more time. Super interesting dynamic. I can't wait to see Viper play. I love that he's just this mad genius, no pun intended, with the Warrior deck that we were just talking about, but just cooks up something out of left field, it seems, just about every week. And there's quite a few players who, when we talk to them in interviews, they're like, yeah, I really wanted to bring something spicy, but I just couldn't make myself do it. No, Viper has none of that nonsense. He is bringing the spice every single week.
He's brought the Miracle Druid list that he talked a lot about. His performance in Grandmasters was not reflective of his performance elsewhere with the deck. This week he's brought Malygos Druid to the table as well, alongside a number of other players who swapped over to the Malygos variants rather than just the Pure Quest variants. He's got Holy Wrath Paladin here as well, and that's a deck I'm looking forward to seeing him pilot because he is so good at those style of combo decks.
Control Shaman in previous weeks as well, just not a deck that we've really seen anywhere else in Europe. Like Viper loves winning in creative ways. He does look at the game differently, and he's very, very proud of this thing. He says, you know, historically, one of the reasons I've done so well is that I get an edge in the deck building stage. I get an edge in lineup construction. I do things differently, and it works for me. So I think it's great to see him continue that, and I wish him success because right now he's not having a great deal of success in his division in Season 2.
Yeah, very tough division across the board. No matter how you slice Grandmasters, his 2-4 record. You know, I don't think that records are reflective of players' prowess with Hearthstone. I think it's just their performance this season. You're going to have different kinds of seasons. You're going to have different kinds of performances. And so when I look at Viper, you know, his tour stops that he dominated at last year, the fact that he made it to the finals of the World Championship.
Seasonal championship performances as well, which is incredible.
One of the most memorable Game 5s I think that will ever take place in competitive Hearthstone. That he had there as well. You know, I'd hate to see him come away with a bad record in this season because he is one of the ones that's taking risks, and I think he's doing it in a very calculated and clever way as well. Like, you can see exactly where his mindfulness is at when you see his risks. He's not just taking them for the sake of doing so.
Yeah, and, you know, my heart goes out to all of these players. We have empathy for them. We're friends with a lot of them, but at the end of the day, one of them is going to have to finish bottom of each division. I think that relegation being in the system is important. It adds to the drama. It means that other players can rotate in, which is very important for the health of the ecosystem. So yeah, as much as we're going to feel bad for whoever it is, can't say it's not good TV.
Whew. Amen to that, brother. And with that, we got to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to get our first match of the day. It's Fino taking on Pavel in this one. Fino desperately needs a win to stave off relegation in this one. Stay tuned.
Hearthstone Esports is home to many competitive formats, each with their own unique variants and rules. Today, we're going to break down one of them, the Shield Phase Conquest format. And here's how it works. To start, both players bring 4 decks, each from a unique class. The match starts with a Shield Phase. This is where both players choose one of their own decks to protect, making it ineligible to be banned. Once the Protect phase has ended, both players will then ban one of their opponent's decks, removing it from the pool. Each player then selects which of their remaining decks they would like to play first, before beginning the first game of the series. When the first game of the series is over, the winner's deck is removed from their pool of eligible decks. Both players then select the next deck they would like to play. The loser of the first game can choose to replay with the deck they lost with, or they can choose one of their other 2 available decks. In best of 3 conquests, the first player to 2 wins is the victor. In best of 5 series, such as those in the semifinals or finals of major events, the first player that makes it to 3 wins takes the W. It's that easy. Shield Phase Conquest allows players to showcase their skill set across different classes, while still giving them the opportunity to play the deck they're most confident with. Now that you've got the download on Shield Phase Conquest, we wish you well on your deck building adventures.
Darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tombs, they grab their whips and fedoras. These legends of the past know exactly what to do. There might be magic monsters, mummies in the markets, and ancient mysticism. But this league's gonna save the world.
First batch of 5 scheduled for today. Fenomeno taking on Pavel in this one. Fenomeno is going to need his plays to look as such as his name was once given to him.
That story can't be true. It can't be true. No one's friends say to them, wow, your plays are phenomenal. You should call yourself that. Like, no. That's not how friends work. They tell you you suck and you should feel bad about yourself. That's how friends function in reality.
You're a hideous friend. We saw Priest.
I mean, we're friends. Is that not our relationship?
I'm not going to claim that we're not friends, but I just said that you're a hideous friend. So.
I rest my case.
Yeah, well, same.
Yeah. Good.
All right. Well, Priest protected on both sides. Hideous protect. I'm kidding. Paladin banned away from Fino in this one. Holy Wrath Paladin, I think, is one of the stronger decks in the format when you're looking at the way that Pavel's lineup is going to interact. He has Reno Mage on his side as his 4th deck, and then. For Pavel, his Quest Druid has been banned away, so we can take a look and see what Pavel has in store, because he's one of the few players now that has brought Reno Mage to Europe, and this is 2 weeks in a row that he's done it. We've yet to see it in play, because last week it was banned in both series, and this week, didn't queue it up yet.
Yeah, and that's a very big deal, because he picked up 2 bans on it, and if you pick up 2 bans, that's essentially 2 wins for the deck. Like, that's doing something beneficial for you in both series that you've played. You can see, firstly, we have pretty colors on our graphics now, which is a big improvement. Ooh. Secondly, you might think there is a card missing, but that is a very deliberate intention on our part, because Pavel is not playing the Bomb Sam D in his Priest.
Something's missing, all right.
So Admirable insisted that that spot be left blank so he could illustrate that point.
Where is Bon Samdi? He said he didn't like it.
He did.
He said that he favored the consistency over the second Acolyte of Pain. He said it was a slow card. Sure, it can help you in some matchups, but usually the game's ended before that. He's not necessarily wrong.
Yeah, but as I pointed out to him, and it's very easy to make that argument when you've just come out of a game where you drew Cleric Double Circle, right? Like, you don't need the card draw after that point. It's the games where that doesn't quite happen, where Bomb Somebody can come back and find you a little clutch point.
You know, to make it even more poetic, though, yesterday we did see some players struggle because Bon Samdi was just stuck in their hand.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
I think it's a powerful card worth the slot. I think it's been demonstrated why it's important. I think as the metagame develops more, it's a card that you can consider cutting because you can see where your matchups sit.
Yeah.
I don't think we're quite there yet.
I think that's fair. And I made the point yesterday that, you know, I really wanted to hear Pavel's point of view on it because, you know, I'm not 100% sold that Bomb Samdi is just essential in every build of Priest that you put together. I think it's a very good card. I kind of agree with Pavel's assessment that it's very strong in some matchups, and then sometimes you'd just rather have a card that you can play and curve out with in some other matchups. And so I was interested to hear his perspective. But all that aside, we have a beautiful Priest mirror.
Well,
Which, if it gets anywhere near the heights of the Priest mirror we had yesterday, we're in for a wild ride.
so I will say that I do somewhat enjoy the Light Warden standoffs, where neither player is really willing to do anything in fear of what can happen on the punish side. So this is one of those unique situations. You know, if these are clerics instead, this game's a mess. If these are Light Wardens, this board gets awfully tense with how minions are going to trade into each other, and at some point it explodes into a finale of fireworks where one player has minions and the other player does not.
Yes. You see Fino just refuse to push the 1 there, just to not give Pavel options for healing. The only option for healing is to heal up Fino's 2-3, which doesn't really do anything for Pavel because that pulls it out of range of the trade anyway.
But he's got to make something happen, because if he just plays his own injured Tolvir, Fino gets to heal up his minion and then trade back. So, how to respond?
There wasn't really a lot you can do there, right? If Pavel plays Circle of Healing here, like that sucks because again the board is symmetrical and Circle of Healing does just as much good for Fino as it does for Pavel.
Yeah, you're kind of handcuffed.
Yep. This is just a beautiful looking board state now from Fino's side because he has attacker's initiative to break these ties.
Important note, Fino has 2 copies of Silence, where Pavel has 1 copy of Silence. Silence, I think, an important card in this matchup.
Does using a Topsy-Turvy here improve your trades in any way? Do you around that Light Warden problem?
It's an excellent question. You were thinking Topsy the Light Warden itself?
Yeah, there was like Topsy the Light Warden or Topsy the opposing Tolvir so that your 2-attack Tolvir traded through it. But it's not a significant improvement either way. I think the value of having Topsy in hand is probably better than both of those things.
No silence necessary. And for Pavel, if he coins out High Priest, he's looking at double trades on board that take care of it. But perhaps that can buy you back initiative. Fino would have to use 2 of his mana. Or have a resource to expend.
What is a loon's will?
Pretty tough already.
It is, yeah. And it goes back to when I say having Topsy in hand is probably more benefit than both of those plays that I suggested. Topsy is actually a pretty useful card, both offensively, just for ending the game quickly if you get that kind of hand, but also defensively as well, because, you know, you might see 2 7s and 1 9s and all these kind of crazy things that you have no way of taking care of. Topsy-Turvy is a pretty effective card for just making sure that the board can't snowball the other way and you're not under threat of Inner Fire coming back at you. Pavel is not having a very good time right now.
Well, I think he's like calmly recognizing that this is what he has to do, though.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I found when I played Priest Mirrors, is that you kind of just got to play your thing and hope that your opponent doesn't take pretty massive advantage of what's happening with it.
Right. There is now
I must consider.
a real value trade on board, unless again the Topsy comes into play.
I think you're pretty happy to trade off a Light Warden here. Yeah, that's been 1 mana for 3 mana at this point. Like, you have your own injured Blade Master down with an injured Tolvir.
Right.
Versus nothing on Pavel's side.
I wonder.
The consideration for Fino is always going to be, I think, how do I handle High Priest Ahmet?
I was going to say, you can't just keep the Light Warden, though. Wait. That wasn't the way to do it, was it?
Why not?
I was going to Power Shield afterwards. Yeah, okay, no, this is still fine. This is still fine. Just heal up the Tolvir and go from there. Oh! Circle? That's a circle. Welcome to Hearthstone Grandmasters. Priest Mirrors.
Pavel is now officially not having a good time.
No.
Yeah.
Pavel has graduated from not having a good time to just being
I
dead.
see a dark future.
Hey, I got you, friend.
Fino needed this. He's been on the receiving end of a couple of these beatings so far.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game-closing turn.
I must consider.
Armet can be dealt with. Silence completely neutralizes the 1/7.
Yeah, I guess the silence is my question, right? Like, what's the one way Fino perhaps loses this game? I'm thinking something
Psychopomp.
specifically like Psychopomp Ahmet play another 1-drop.
Sure. I don't think that even happens, right? Because you just have lethal on the next turn.
wonder.
In that case, more often than not. I don't think you have to
So
worry
you
about
want
it.
to silence and push. Ah. Do you even need to silence then?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm pretty interested in killing the Ahmet.
Oh, yeah, no, the Armet was dying. It's
Yeah.
just like, if you use the silence here, and even if Psychopomp comes down and pulls out an Armet, like, how much damage do you just push straight back through that, right? Like, it just doesn't matter.
Pavel does not have an adequate answer by any stretch of the means. And that turn right there is going to solidify it. Is that enough for lethal?
12, 14, 18, 19.
He needs a draw still.
21, 23. Yeah, he needs a draw.
Now.
In a fire, pyromancer stuff, draw more cards, find another circle of healing. There we go. That'll do, pig. That'll do.
Make that 8, make that 16, make that 32. Just in the 2 big ones. Overkill potential. Fino rockets off to a Game 1 win. And he's needed it.
Yeah, I think 1 or 2 places where his play could have improved, leading to that 0-6. Like, I think it would be disingenuous to say someone is 0-6 and they've just played perfectly and made no mistakes. Like, that probably doesn't happen. But he has definitely been on the receiving end of some games very similar to that, where he just didn't really have a whole lot of agency as to what was going on. So yeah, I think he deserves one now and then, and I'm happy to see him get off to a good start, restore some of that confidence, and now hopefully Game 2 we can see the other side, and he's just going to play like a god and pick up that second win.
Is that the prophecy now? You're just calling it?
Sure, yeah.
So
let's
you just
do
have
it.
precognition all of a sudden?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. Minority Report up in here.
What else is happening next?
Well, I can tell you there's a lot of crimes going on in this building right now.
Okay, what else is happening?
I feel something dawning on us, like a break or something like that. Is that what's happening?
Wow, he really does have precognition. This is spooky. We're going to have to get
It's
to the bottom
exhausting.
of it. So we're going to a break, and when we come back, we'll have to the bottom of whatever's happening with Sato right now, and also Fino and Pavel. They're getting into game number 2, so stay tuned.
Legends say powerful treasures are hidden everywhere here in Aldum.
If we hope to defeat Rafam, we'll need as many as we can get. He's already unleashed the ancient plague lords and countless monsters. Keep them distracted, Reno.
Not a problem. This plan is totally gonna work. Ain't that right, Finley?
Oh, yes! I have them right where I want them.
There is an artifact here. The name is...
The scales of justice. Oh, it must be really fancy.
only to be used in a time of great peril. Yes, I think this qualifies.
Hey, look, Finley! You've lured one of the Plague Lords!
Take this, fiend!
In the face! Yeah! Hey, guys! Get that treasure! We've got a Plague Lord to destroy!
Get these, hurry!
Not to worry, Finley. We just push this thing right here.
No, that's a trap! Watch out!
It's all good. I am totally tired.
Gracious me!
What we actually need to do is press this. And there.
A
fish.
No! It's the scale chaos of justice.
Ah, who wants to use it first?
Oh, I do! Me! On second thought, maybe give it to Finley?
All you had to do was hold a rope.
Here we go, blaming the tall, ruggedly handsome guy again.
My name is Christos Sakopoulos. My username comes from when I was a kid. I used to go to like an internet cafe with my friends to play like, I remember WoW and stuff like that. And I just had to make a character one day, and one of my friends said, your plays are phenomenal, so you can just put the name Fenomeno there. And I just did it, and then it just stuck. The thing that's unique about my playstyle, I feel, is that I sometimes think about stupid plays that other people would never even consider, and I try to get something out of it. I think people don't pay attention to details like trading or going face. I really pay attention to those things because I think it's super important. Like even one bad trade can cost you the game a lot of times. My favorite memory was definitely when I won my first Hearthstone tournament last year in HCT Orange County. And doing that just gave me so much more confidence and made me feel like I was free again. I'd say being in Grandmasters means that I've made it to the top players of Europe, which has always been my goal. So yeah, I'm looking forward to start competing again.
It's Hearthstone Grandmasters for Europe. We're in our first match of the day right now. It's Fino versus Pavel. I'm Nathan. That's Admirable Zamora. I'm joined by Simon Sotto Welch. And Fino picking up a much-needed win in Game 1 in this series. Kind of looking at the lineups on paper, I do believe there's a possibility there's some disadvantages that are coming into play. And I think our next game is possibly one of them, where Pavel's going to be on Holy Wrath Paladin, and Fino's going over to Quest Druid.
Not just Quest Druid, Malygos Druid. And that's,
excuse me, yes.
That's quite a big difference in my mind, because it means that first off, Fino has less pressure, so the pressure plan is not as effective against the Holy Wrath Paladin. Secondly, there's only one hidden Oasis typically in the build for Fino, and in fact, for Fino, there is only one copy of Hidden Oasis in the deck, so the out-heal plan actually becomes much more difficult as well. So I would imagine, having not put an enormous amount of time into testing this matchup, that Holy Wrath Paladin has a bigger edge against Malygos Druid than it does against Quest Druid.
Interesting. To me, I would think that it's tougher for Pavel. I'm not, I think it's tough to say where the edge is. So I'm going to give two perspectives on this. Number one, I think Pavel has a different angle he has to fight from due to the Malygos. You don't know when the damage is coming necessarily.
Sure.
And so there's more guesswork with like timeout and such. You may have to use them more liberally because of the way the damage explosion comes from Fino's side. But number two is that lack of pressure. I mean, when Pavel has all the time in the world to keep drawing cards and not have to worry as much about board state, I do think that is a big benefit that he has. To ignore in the middle and later stages of the game and just continue to draw through the deck. So I'm quite curious. Admittedly, this is a difficult matchup, I think, to test in general, just because there's so many different kinds of endgame iterations. But this is one of those matchups that you need a wealth of experience to be able to nail down properly.
Yeah, for sure. Fino just trying to cycle as quickly as possible just to keep up with Pavel here, which he kind of has to. Because there are some key iterations that he's going to need to hit. Because you say Pavel has to be scared of kind of explosive burst from hand, and he does, but he still gets to see like key trigger points before he gets to react to that, right? Like if Elise hasn't been played, and the Malygos hasn't been discounted, if Dream Petal Florist hasn't been played, the max damage in one turn is 12. Like, it's just Malygos double Moonfire. That's the only thing you can do in those scenarios. So if Pavel can just wait until he sees any of those options, then he can be in a much, much better position. However, Fino is sat with the kind of hand right now that can end the game really, really soon.
Oh, yeah.
If he does not pick up other minions to interfere with this.
So 2 burst combos that I think are relevant. Number 1 is when Dream Petal Florist hits at least the Enlightened. With Malygos alone, you can deal 24 damage just with Moonfires.
Yep.
If you have 2 Innervates in hand, that damage can go up alongside with Swipe. So you would get the 24 plus the 9 from Swipe if you had 2 Innervates when you played the Elise.
Right, okay, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the second one is when Dream Petal Florist hits the Malygos, your burst damage can go through the roof.
Your burst damage is 1 million.
Effectively, yeah.
Yes.
Like, you can play the 2-cost Malygos plus the Flabidness Flute in the same turn, and then you can play Elise, and all your Moonfires now have plus 10 spell damage. So if you have 2 Moonfires, that's just 44.
You can just Elise your hand and play 2 2-mana Malygos, and then have a bunch of Moonfires, play the Floop as well. Like, you have infinite damage at that point. Like,
Effectively, yeah.
Your opponent blows up. That's what happens.
And so those are really, I think, some of the key moments that Pavel has to think about. And the way that the ebb and flow of the game is going to work, you know, if for whatever reason Pavel can get pressure down, he does have threats of just Holy Wrath and True Silver being able to end games, or Zephrys being able to end games. On Fino's side, he does have a copy of Zephrys in the deck as well. So, you know, I'm curious how Zephrys interacts with cheaper Malygoses as well. Like, can you nab Soulfires off of Zephrys in that point to help end games sooner?
Right.
A lot of tricky stuff.
Yeah, and that actually is worth noticing as well, because Fino is playing the Zephrys, as you said, instead of the single copy of the card whose name I always forget, the Discoverer Choose One card.
Worthy
It's called
Expedition.
Worthy Expedition, which also functions as less pressure or less healing, because that's a card that you could throw out and you could look for your hidden Oasis, you could look for an Oasis Surger, you could look for a Cenarius, whatever it is. That option's not available for Fino. There is 0 copies of that in his deck.
Yep. To me, I'm so glad that Malygos Druid is back, because it's reminiscent of so many of the players in Grandmasters right now and the dominance they had when Malygos Druid was the deck to play.
Yeah.
Every single top player just had a wealth of experience on the deck, and they had mastered so many different variants of endgame play.
Yes. I remember very specifically a game in Seoul, I believe, HCT Tour Stop Seoul as it was back then, when Hunter Ace was playing the the Twig version of Malygos Druid.
Yeah.
And just one turn, just looked down at his hand and was like, this isn't a Malygos turn, and this isn't a Malygos game anymore. And he just tempoed out like a Lich King and a bunch of other stuff with his 20 mana turn with the Twig. And I was like, you know what? You're smart, Casper. Well done.
So Pavel, perhaps a glimpse into the timeout feature and how it interacts with the deck. He uses it effectively as a discard. You know, it's the dreaded Paladin turn 7 where none of your plays look very clean and you don't really know what to do. And I think anticipating something like this, I can't really effectively clear out these Oasis Surgers. It's a prime turn for Fino to use Starfall. Yep, use the timeout.
Power takes many.
Something that I found super interesting about this matchup when Sottle and I were practicing it was that I often didn't want to have the Floop in my hand. I often found it cluttering my draw and making it more difficult to land a proper Dream Petal Florist.
Yep. So the crucial point, any class that doesn't gain armor, you can deal 30 without the Floop. In a variety of ways, but you can deal 30, it's secure. So getting the Floop out of your hand, just so you have more hand space to play Nourish or whatever it is, and also just to get the Floop out of your hand so you get a better Dream Petal Florist, because sometimes you get those awkward hands where you Dream Petal Florist, the Dream Petal Florist hits the Floop, and then you have to spend another turn playing that one out from your hand afterwards. So that can speed up your win condition by a turn as well.
As you play a minion, if Floop had the discount from Dream Petal Florist, it will shift back into a 4-mana minion. Pretty much any buff that you put on that Floop when you play a new minion, it will shift. And Fino really thinking about adding this Oasis Surger to board in the Floop variant.
Does cost him a card draw, though. I was going to say, is he considering adding a Bloodfen Raptor to the board? That seems more likely to me, because the card draw continues at that point.
I like that. Pavel down to 5 cards in deck.
Yeah. It's just kind of chilling right now. 26, only 6 left on board. 4 cards left in deck, card draw in hand.
Fino's got to make something happen soon.
Yeah.
How do you get there?
You got to start wrathing things.
Ooh. I think the Crystal Merchant means more to me than the Oasis Surger does right now.
Kind of agree with that too.
Yeah, if he draws Malygos off this Wrath, I mean, that's a major turn. This is something else that's important. I don't really think he needs the Elise.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. We've talked about it a lot, right? You don't need everything, except rarely against Control Warrior. Sometimes against Control Warrior, you need every piece of damage that you can possibly generate. But yeah, I think when I say you need to Wrath stuff, he doesn't want to take damage off board, so he just plays out the Elise. He's like, well, at least this stays on board as a 5-1, and I still get to keep pushing with this 5-3. Guess that makes a lot of sense.
Fino's got 10 from hand, and he's got 11 in play. So if Pavel failed to account for life total in any way... Oh, excuse me, he's got 12 from hand with the Pounce.
Yeah. That is the Zephyrus activating card there. True Silver Champion, last duplicate left in Pavel's deck.
And so for Pavel, too, the card draw train has come to a pretty abrupt stop. And so he's got to think about how he wants to interact afterwards.
Yeah, there's a flash of light. He's chilling. Just might be a Zephyrus clear turn this turn, though, because this is kind of just about the last board that Fino has in terms of big chunky minions that you have to worry about.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to clear. And I think with the True Silver swings, like, I feel like Pavel's interested in setting up versus a potential hidden Oasis.
Sure.
I'm not certain, actually. There's a lot of things to think about on this one.
Ooh. Not what I was expecting. Swipe's about the best you got, yeah.
Yeah. Zephyrus is not concerned with the 1-2. Nope. He does not read card text. He reads card stats and keywords.
I was looking for a cleave setup, personally, myself, but it didn't. When he played the Flash of Light, he couldn't then play True Silver Zephyrus Cleave to take care of the board. So just had to end up leaving the Crystal Merchant up.
Fino finally now drawn to Nubasath Defenders. The wrong time.
Yeah. That flooped Elise in hand is now active.
Important to note that the patch changed Elise to duplicate left to right. It will always go in order.
Yep. Kind of awkward, because if he ever does want to Elise, he can't get that Anubisath Defender out of hand to find himself some hand space, because that will lose him his floop. So that card's kind of stuck in hand. Well, in the world where he wants to play Elise, which we've already established isn't necessary. If he finds his other Ferocious out, he might be very interested in it. Okay, it's just going. 4 Moonfires with a Malygos drawer is now 24 from hand.
Wow, that's a really smart setup. Preemptively get the Moonfires in hand, and there's the Goose.
There is the Goose.
Pavel has to deliver lethal this turn.
He has timeout number 2.
Exactly, so he timeouts. That gives Fino an opportunity to... Oh, he can't draw Hidden Oasis. His hand is full.
Correct.
Oh, that's game. He cannot change the context of the game next turn. Fino.
Well, Pavel has 2 cards left in his deck, though.
He can rip a Holy Wrath. Oh, I guess you
But
risk...
Pavel doesn't know that he doesn't need both Holy Wraths.
Yeah, true story, true story.
Yeah, okay, the game is solved when we can see both hands. It's not solved from Pavel's position whatsoever.
Which path to choose?
That's the feeling I was looking for.
Well, you got it.
Yeah. That's the obvious thing. Ah, but he doesn't know that.
I must act now.
It's time to test your metal. Let's stash that away.
Best of both worlds. He got it. I'm telling you now, precog, he got it. Don't doubt my powers.
Why did he do it like that?
Does that look like the face of a... Well, okay, all right, memes aside. Let's seriously break that down. We came to the conclusion...
Okay.
We came to the conclusion, right, that playing Holy Wrath that turn was correct.
Yes.
Right? Because we could see a reality where that solved the game.
Ah.
Pavel imagines a reality where that potentially solves the game, but says, hey, you know what? If I'm going to play a Holy Wrath this turn anyway, why wouldn't I just try and win the game with it?
So I guess my question is because he doesn't leave himself a timeout backup? Like, if he fails to draw that, he's relying strictly on the Shirvala ticking his life total high enough that he's out of range.
Mm-hmm.
That in that situation was not true. Is it? 3? Because he takes 4 from the board? He does go up to 30.
Yeah. It also depends exactly on what his other last card is that wasn't the Shirvala at that point, because if it cycles, then he's still fine for the same setup on the previous thing.
Well, he spent 9 mana was the thing. So he has no defense set up after the 30 point. In that particular instance, actually, if he did not succeed, Fino, I believe, had lethal. So he plays Malygos, 4 Moonfires, that's
with
24.
the pounce as well.
With the pounce as well, it's 26, and he would have 4 damage left on board with the 3/4 Elise plus the Crystal Merchant.
Okay.
So that's my confusion on it, is not leaving yourself the timeout in that situation, where if you fail on the Holy Wrath...
Well, what did he spend his other mana on?
He played 2 bankers.
I played 2 bankers, okay, fair enough. That 2 bankers would be a little bit confusing for me. So, okay, then I guess...
increasing the percent.
So I guess the assessment then is that Pavel felt that he was much further behind in that game than we could see that he wasn't.
Or he wasn't thinking about Malygos 4 Moonfire Pounce. I mean, that's a pretty specific hand.
Well, I mean, I guess he's saying... I think he could be specifically thinking about Malygos 4 Moonfires and saying, well, damn, I'm not going to get to the end of my deck. And if he has Hidden Oasis in hand as well, like I have to go this turn, right? He just saw a hand get duplicated.
Yeah. So it's a pure range play.
Right, so if the hand gets duplicated, he's probably like, oh, damn, he has Hidden Oasis and Ferocious Howls and whatever else in his hand. Or he has all the damage. Or, worst case scenario, he has both and I'm just checkmated from all angles. I have a chance to win the game right now. Let's take it.
It makes some sense to me. I mean, you could break everything down on that one to just Pavel took a 50-50.
Yeah. He had to look at a completely unknown set of cards where all he really knew about them is that Fino was interested in duplicating them on the previous turn.
And by the way, with 10 cards in hand.
Yeah, and then he had to assess, am I better or worse than 50% to win the game?
Maybe he was thinking specifically about 4 Moonfire and Pounce and said, you know what? If the Hidden Oasis is there, I lose to that too. So, got to take the 50-50. Oh. Interesting.
Well, with that aside, Fino now has to settle into what is a pretty poor matchup. It's him on Quest Shaman versus the Priest from Pavel. We did see Bunny Hopper piloting this expertly yesterday. Bunny Hopper mentioned that, you know, he does just seem to keep winning with Shaman, whereas other people were starting to fall out of love with that deck a little bit. And he kind of illustrated why with a pretty unique game plan against the Priest being executed very, very well yesterday.
Well, Fino rolled his eyes a bit at this Northshire Cleric.
Yep.
Go for the gusto. That's a decent one.
It is actually a little bit worse than Rush Lackey in the situation, though, weirdly enough.
And now worse than Ethereal Lackey.
Yep.
As much as it pains me to develop into a Northshire Cleric, I have found it's the thing to do because one way you can climb back in is if your opponent spends mana healing and doesn't get extra threats in play. You have an isolated threat that you have a target on.
Well, that's exactly what Pavel does.
For Fino, there's no natural transformation in his deck, no Plague of Murlocs or anything, no Urshocks.
Right.
So Pavel does have a clear-cut game plan of how to best counterplay this. With Fino at 2 mana, he doesn't need to Divine Spirit at the start.
Yeah, I think, you know, just trade heal was very reasonable there for Pavel, just in the situation that he's in. Like, even if there was some kind of miracle from Fino that involves taking care of this cleric with 2 mana, it just means that Pavel just has clear skies to just jam Amen on the following turn. Okay. That is very much what Fino needed, but that Nephesset Ritualist draw just immediately snapped all the hope away.
All right, so cheap Mogu Flesh Shaper, though. So what draw? Mutate?
Mutate.
Second Flesh Shaper?
Mutate Lackey Generator into the Evolve Lackey or the second Mogu. I guess those were the ones. Fino found one of them. Is it even good enough, though?
I definitely see some potential for Fino. I think that looking at the Ahmet and the Beaming Sidekick in hand, it's much more difficult. But from Fino's perspective, he's got a real good shot in this game. Like if you're looking at his board from his side, he's thinking, okay, I can win this game.
Yep.
He's not wrong. Heck, even with the Ahmet and the Beaming Sidekick, there was some potential. Now I'm looking at an Inner Fire as well. Ooh, this is going to be tough. Whew. For Pavel, I think a key is to say, you know what? The Northshire's done its job. Fight for board hard.
I very much agree. I think I just want to see Pavel go all in on the Ahmet here. Divine Spirit in a fire in hand. Like, all he has to do is just have one big minion spit. I don't like this. This feels slow to me.
It looks fast, though.
Circle of Healing certainly sped it up significantly.
Life is an
Oh boy.
Alright, that Pyro is a big kicker as well.
I got you, friend.
So now for Fino. Bog Slosh on the Mogu Flesh Shaper would turn it into a 5/6, which means that he can kill the Northshire this turn.
Yes. You can get a value trade with it first. No, he can't, because then he
cannot.
can't replay it afterwards. Yeah.
Three-face it is.
What to do?
Just not at all how he wins the game. He wins by suppressing Pavel's effects, not by delivering damage. It's so hard to race the priest in this situation.
Right. Yeah, Fino sees it, though.
To the bottom now.
It's about the best he's got. Comes back down for exactly one. This is a little bit illustrating my fear. Like, it hasn't happened. And I guess I don't know how it does happen with the 4 mana that Fino had available, but I was worried that, you know, a big tempo play would come out from Fino, and Pavel would find himself more behind on the board than he was on the previous turn. And the more behind on board you are, the harder it is to just start jamming Ahmet into the board. But it hasn't worked out that way. I think this is still a very secure position. Bring this Ahmet down.
I got you, friend.
Psychic there? No, okay. The arrow was not correct, it seems.
I wonder.
Goodness. I don't know how Fino wins from here. I'm thinking of a lot of outcomes where he can get back into it, but it's nothing that can happen right now. It requires, I think, a draw. And the first draw I'm looking at is Giggling Inventor.
Also, Evil Totem Ethereal Lackey is something worth thinking about, because then Plague of Murlocs becomes a thing, Earthquake becomes a thing.
Yeah, if I'm in Fino's spot, I'm interested in trying to do as many things that influence the game as possible. And so that, to me, spells put stuff in play, generate a card.
Yep.
Try to squelch the board position a bit, and then rely on the draw.
Ethereal, yes.
Ooh, that's a big draw. So
That
now
keeps
for
the
Pavel,
game alive.
with no card draw in hand, he cannot have that colossal turn. However, he does have Divine Spirit. And so Divine Spirit is the key here. Fino needs the perfect outcome.
Plague of Murlocs, specifically. Earthquake, ineffective and also too expensive at this point in the game anyway. It's a question mark whether Plague of Murlocs still doesn't just represent lethal on the opposing side of the board anyway.
That's going to be outcome-based, right?
Yep.
Pavel further diminishing those outcomes. Fino needs help.
Gotta do it. 2 outs for Plague.
Pair of shocks, maybe?
Pair of shocks will do it, sure.
That's not those.
All right.
It's only one shock. But it takes care of 18 attack on board.
Yep.
So you get Shock and you get Bog Slosher this turn.
Do you want to slosh or do you want to draw? Are we back to cards in the deck being relevant again because the armor has been taken care of?
Interesting.
You belong to the bomb now.
So next turn, I think Hex starts to become relevant as well.
It's true.
Oh, he just has a Topsy. We're so dumb. I just didn't even see the Topsy there. I thought that was a silence.
What's Pavel doing? Is that Pavel's version of a dab? Is that what happened? I'm very unclear on what went on that webcam right there. But yeah, Fino, I mean, I was just talking from Fino's perspective. He was digging. Like, yeah, he was real dead that whole time because there was the Topsy in hand for the Pyromancer.
I literally thought that was silence.
No, it was a Topsy.
What am I thinking? I guess I'm just thinking like
that it's a spell and it costs 0.
Yeah, and I'm like looking at Fino's spot and I'm like trying to dig for all the. I'm like, well, maybe if he dances through the raindrops and he hits double Earth Shock. No. Topsy.
Dances through the raindrops?
Well, the rain of inner fires that comes down. It's terrifying.
Sure. You can dodge a wrench. You can't dodge a topsy-turvy.
Yes. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yep.
Sounds like a spare part. Just throw a wrench at him. Pavel's ready for the interview here. Pavel, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Congratulations on your win here in this set. You pick up a crucial game number 3. And I wanted to ask you first and foremost about some of the spots in this matchup that you felt were particularly interesting or really stood out to you as some tough spots that were in the match.
In the second game, there was a questionable turn if I go for 50-50 Holy Wrath or not. That was a difficult decision to make. But if he had double Moonfires and if he copied both Moonfires, it would have been lethal with Malygos. And I didn't want to use Timeout yet, because if I use Timeout, he can just Branching Path. Not Branching Path, but 3-mana card that gives armor. And also, if he copied 3-mana card that gives armor, he can get 20 armor. And it would have been difficult to kill him later on. And I thought it's a really good chance to kill him that turn. And even if I failed, the game was not completely over. And I still had chance if he didn't have heal cards or armor cards. And the first game... the first game, there was no decisions I could have made. Nothing could have changed. The only thing that could have changed is maybe keeping Blade Master plus Circle was wrong. Maybe you just always look for Cleric, Inner Fire, plus Shield, or 1-mana 1/2 minion in Priest Mirror. Maybe other hands are just not good enough. But besides that, there was no difficult decisions. Actually, in game 3, I wasn't sure if I should keep Amit or not. If I would have get one drop on Mulligan, I would have definitely kept Amit, but since I didn't get, I wasn't sure, but Hamid is just one of the highest win rate % card in the deck, so I decided to keep it anyway.
All right, so now all the serious stuff is out of the way. I want to ask the real question. What was going on in your camera at the end of that game? Were you trying to dab on Fino? Is that what you were doing?
Yes.
Okay. It wasn't very good, my friend. It was a very weak dab. I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't practice.
Okay.
Maybe next time I'll practice and it's gonna be better.
No, don't practice dabbing, Pavel. This is serious friend-to-friend advice right now. Person to person. I'm old and wise. Don't dab. I beg of you, please. So now you sit at a record that is very different from Season 1. You're actually at a pretty strong record now with a 5-3 match score overall. I feel like the division swap-ups have some influence over this, but I want to know your thoughts overall. Like, how tough has this season been in comparison to the first one? And what do you think has really been some of the biggest differences from Season 1 to Season 2 for you?
I don't know. I think that other division is easier. I would prefer to be in other division in Europe. And I don't know. I think I just played the game a little bit since season 1, because before season 1 I took a long break and didn't play the game. I think that's the main difference.
It's good practice.
Yep, well, it's certainly good to have you back. I certainly think Hearthstone's more fun when Pavel's playing it. So congratulations, Pavel. We'll let you go. Well done on the win.
Thank you.